What's going on, everybody? I'm Aslan Hajavandi. Welcome on into this live edition of Warchant TV, a town hall edition, if you will, where we've got all the big hitters when it comes to covering the beat for Florida State athletics. We have founder and administrator of Warchant.com, Gene Williams, Ira Schofel, managing editor of our website, and Corey Clark, lead/senior writer. This is just the tip of the iceberg of everything at Warchant.com, with the additions of Tom Lang and Jeff Cameron as well, Michael Langston and Austin Cox helping us out with our recruiting. So do subscribe to the website. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Totally free. Buttons in the lower right corner. Also hit that thumbs up button. Show your support for all this great information we're about to give you free of charge. And as I said, gentlemen, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what we bring our valued subscribers on Warchant.com. What we're dealing with right now in football is possibly just the tip of the iceberg for broad changes to come. We have a roundtable up on the website right now about this whole SEC expansion with Texas and Oklahoma apparently imminently getting ready, set to join the Southeastern Conference, and what this could mean for the ACC and Florida State, Ira. Lots of big questions. I don't know how many answers we have. Anxiety is what I know that a lot of us have. You're going to help quell some of it. Where do we begin, Ira? Where do we begin?
Yeah, just to direct people, as you said, to the piece that's already up on the website, it's been up there today, the roundtable where we all took turns answering some questions, kind of looking back in the past, back to the decision in 1991 to join the ACC, then the decisions in the 2000s to sign a grant of rights and solidify the ACC, and then extend that further to launch an ACC network, and then what options are out there beyond that. So that's the piece we put up on the website, but we wanted to just kind of get together to discuss some of that again on a video format, and also let our subscribers and other people ask questions and kind of just have a conversation. I guess Gene coined it as a town hall. So that's what we're here for.
Gene, you have unique perspective with your law background, so we're going to have to lean on you a lot here in the coming days, weeks, months, and maybe even years. I mean, you've been at the forefront of this for a long time, Gene, kind of sounding the whistle on what's been happening in terms of television revenue and the widening gap between the ACC and the SEC. I don't know how surprising you find this, but where's your mind at currently?
Do I find the SEC expansion surprising? Absolutely. I don't think any of us saw that coming. The widening revenue gap, really not a surprise. It's unfortunate. It seems like the writing's been on the wall. The gap is getting wider and wider. It's scary. I mean, frankly, it's scary. We talked about the gap 10, 15 years ago. You're talking $1 million or $2 million. It wasn't a big deal. I mean, you can make that up. You can coach a little better, recruit a little better, hire a good coach. And we saw that all the time. Florida State would consistently out-compete with the SEC for a long time. And now that tide has started to turn, and it is getting scary. And now with the addition of, it seems like it's going to happen now with Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC. I mean, that's going to catapult that television contract with ESPN. I can't even imagine what it's going to be worth with those two teams. Does it go up another 10, 20 million per team maybe? So now we're not even talking, we're talking getting close to doubling the television revenue from what Florida State and the ACC members are making compared to the SEC. This has to sound an alarm to just not the ACC, but all the other Power 5 conferences that aren't in the SEC, because it's scary where we're going, that one conference could effectively dominate the entire landscape.
Corey, this is, I don't know, I think you said this has been your favorite sport ever since you were a wee lad with your father going to Florida State games, the entire sport of college football. You wrote a column kind of fleshing out some of those feelings, but as things kind of build more momentum of this happening, are you getting more angry, or are you just more resigned to what the future might hold?
Yeah, that's hard to say. It's a combination. It's a healthy combination of both, of anger and resignation. Resignated to the fact that it's been about money forever now. I mean, everything in life is, and college football is no different. In 1990, I guess you had no way of knowing that it would become a legitimately multi-billion-dollar industry and probably the second most popular sport in the country, TV-wise. And these TV contracts would become this. But as we are now, yeah, I'm starting to get, I think anger is starting to take over, because as I wrote in the column, it would be so nice if anybody cared about the future of the sport. And, I see all these national college football writers, at least on Twitter, they're talking about what next and what the next move should be in the next game of chess and what options these conferences have, without kind of really stepping back and saying, wait, why did the SEC do this? Does the SEC care at all about the future of the sport? And there's been, in my opinion, not nearly enough pushback to the SEC and what they're trying to do, which is clearly monopolize college football. And you can say, yes, it's a business, it's a capitalist society, do what you got to do. But, man, come on now. Like, it's not going to be much of a business if there's only 9 teams competing for a championship every year, and 8 of them are from the SEC, and the other one's either Clemson or Ohio State. And that's where I think the SEC wants to go. I don't think that's very smart for the long-term viability of this sport. So I hope something can change. Probably won't, because there's a lot of money to be made. Why would Sankey turn that money down? But it's depressing / infuriating.
And Corey, if I could jump in, I think you had a really good analogy with the NFL. I mean, imagine the NFC East having twice as much money as the other conferences to pay players and facilities and everything else. I mean, it's absurd. The NFL is the most successful sport in this country because of parity, because they figured out a way that Tampa can be mediocre one year and they win the Super Bowl the next year. It gives every fan base hope. It keeps them engaged in the product. It keeps them buying tickets, buying merchandise. But if there's only, like you said, 9 teams that can compete for a national championship effectively, then 90% of people are going to start tuning it off. They're not going to buy merchandise. They're not going to go to games anymore.
And Ira, wouldn't you think ESPN, we know they're the puppeteer in all this, wouldn't you think they would rather more teams be invested and involved in this sport than catering to the same 8 or 9 teams they've been doing for the last 10 years? It just seems like they should want parity. They should want people on the West Coast to care about their sport.
I don't know, man. I think they care about the schools that are going to make them money. And the schools that are going to make them money are the leagues they have deals with, and particularly the SEC, where they put, obviously, that's where they're putting their big bet on. And whether or not other schools stop drawing fans or whether or not other schools kind of fall by the wayside, I don't think they care. I think they care about that 12-team playoff. If that becomes a reality, they care about the SEC. You would think they care about the ACC. And so that makes me wonder, maybe they've got some other card up their sleeve. And that's why, there's a lot of speculation right now that maybe they're going to figure out a way to do something else. It's not like they just came up with this plan for Texas and Oklahoma to join the SEC this week or last week. It's been months and months it's been months in the making. So who knows exactly what they might have planned for the ACC or some of these schools. But man, I don't think they care about the overall entirety of the sport. I think they care about the teams that are going to make them the most money.
But what sense the Cowboys make more money than anybody else in the NFL? Like, they make the most revenue. They had the biggest, 3 of the 10 biggest stars selling jerseys are Cowboys. They're America's team, all that nonsense. But the NFL doesn't just cater to the Cowboys. So, and it's the biggest sport in the country. So like Gene said, wouldn't you want to kind of follow that model a little more and make it at least accessible to 40 teams instead of 9?
Well,
NFC it's a little bit more TV games. It feels like prime time, but you're right though, Corey.
That's true. It's Al Michaels and Collinsworth are calling the Cowboys and Eagles every time they play. That's a good point.
But I would also say that maybe we get to a point where there is a super conference or conferences, and you have a commissioner, and there is some sort of agreement on that line. But what I don't understand is, if that's where it's going, then why would you do this right now?
Yeah. Right.
I think one thing, I think you're giving ESPN too much credit that they've got all this planned out ultimate thing. And, we've all dealt with ESPN a little bit. I had years ago some business dealings with them. And, it was weird. We negotiated something for a while, and then all of a sudden they flipped and totally changed. And then I talked to some people there, and they go, that's what they do. It's just like they keep flipping leadership. They keep flipping what they want to do. I don't think there's a grand plan. I think this is a short-term money grab. Nobody's thinking ahead that, this is going to be bad for ESPN in 5-10 years. You know what? The people making those decisions at ESPN aren't going to be there in 5-10 years. They don't care. So to me, it's all this, going back to your point. Obviously, there needs to be, like the NFL, a commissioner or someone looking out for, instead of TV doing money grabs, the SEC doing power plays. Because at the end of the day, I think everybody agrees this is really bad for the sport.
Absolutely. What's good for the sport, though, is fans. Fans being engaged. We have several of them right here joining us live on YouTube. And our guy, he's the early riser, Rob Raithbun. He's got a new calling card. He just shows up before we even begin and drops money. Nice. Large sums of it. Rob, I don't know are we supposed to earmark this for the life raft of the SEC fund? Go in the comments below. Everybody, if you could hit the thumbs up, we'd would appreciate that too. Rob, thanks so much, man. If you got a comment, if you got an opinion on this, Rob, please do share it with us. We'll pop it up on the screen and we'll kick it around. And then he adds another 20 because he's crazy. This is for 2 and Don. There's There's a guy in here that's like, help me out. Somebody tip on my behalf. And Rob's like,
nice.
Rob.
You can just Venmo Rob the money.
Rob, crazy. I love it. Thank you so much, Rob. It's incredible, man.
Thank you, Rob.
Let's see here. Eric Angel, who we saw at the spring game, at the post game. We certainly appreciate his company and some of that. Says, what's up, Warchant fellas? The ACC needs to bring Notre Dame permanently for football and bring West Virginia or UCF. Thoughts? Go Noles. Corey,
Well,
I'll let you off the leash. Go ahead.
Yeah, they should. That I'm certainly that's their number one play. The question is, why will Notre Dame do it? Why would they do it? Certainly not for the betterment of other schools. So I don't know that Notre Dame would do it. The ACC should do everything short of giving Notre Dame like twice as much. If Notre Dame, if the ACC, and if I'm the commissioner, if I'm Phillips, I go to Notre Dame and say, look, you can get $31 million or whatever all these other schools are getting for being a part of this conference. You can also get half of Duke's. So now you're up to 45. In Duke, what are you going to do? What are you going to bounce? What conference are you going to? Take some from Duke, take some from Boston College, take some from Pitt, Wake, all these schools that do jack squat in the only sport that matters, and give it to Notre Dame as a signing bonus. And make Notre Dame come. Ira, I think you agree with that. That's probably a really good idea.
Ira loves his Dukies. He won't do it. But, not necessarily the way you said it, Corey. And I said this for a while, and I hated when Swofford got in there and said, this has all got to be equal. Well, it's not equal in the Big 12. Teams kept their third-tier television, right? So Oklahoma, Texas had the Longhorn Network. The teams that brought in the money were making more money. Florida State didn't do that. Why, if you don't have third-tier rights, why not base it on television ratings, bowl? How about getting a cut of your bowl appearances, playoff appearances? That wouldn't necessarily help FSU the last couple of years, but generally it would have. It should be more performance-based instead of Wake Forest and Duke and Syracuse and BC making the same amount of money as Florida State. It's insanity.
Yeah, things aren't exactly going great in the Big 12 these days, though, Gene. So I'm not sure.
But they're still making a lot more money. Look at the bottom line. Texas and Oklahoma are still making a lot more money than Florida State.
Yeah, I know, but that conference is still crumbling. It's the reason.
That would have sucked. That would have sucked if the ACC was crumbling and Florida State would have to go to the SEC like there. Yeah, that'd be awful.
Well, that was an option.
If that's the option, then yeah, good work.
Hey, it was for them. But that's the thing I don't understand. People go, oh, but FSU had to do this because if they don't, the ACC would fall apart. Okay, why is that a bad thing?
Well, it's a bad thing if you don't have a landing spot.
Yeah, somebody's taken Florida State, Corey. Come on.
You would think, but who?
The question is who? The Big Ten is not going to take Florida State. Then you look at the SEC, but they even when Florida State was in a position where they were back in 1991. Again, I linked to the piece that Bob Thomas wrote in 2001, looking back at the decision. The SEC was going to take Florida State until they found out Florida State was looking hard at the ACC. And then the SEC was like, oh, no, we're not going to give you an offer because they were mad that Florida State wasn't bowing down. So what would they do if Florida State was stuck in a bad spot? You think they're going to – I get your point, but I also think, especially when it came to the greater rights the first time, there's a little bit of panic that goes – into these situations where nobody wants to be the one left without a dance partner.
Yeah, I think the one we all agree on. I think 91 at the time, what we knew without football television contracts blowing up, it probably was the right decision back then. I don't think that's in dispute. I think the grant of rights. My issue with it in 2013 was you had all the leverage, and like we talked about, you gave Wake Forest just as much as you get. You gave BC. You had an opportunity to get some leverage to get something extra. Whether that's keeping some of your third tier rights, having some outs. How about something in the contract that says, hey, if a competing conference makes 25% more than us, ESPN, you have to make that up or you have to give us an out. Why wasn't that negotiated back in 2003? Why did they just sign off without anything? And then the extension a few years later makes no sense.
Corey, I think he thinks I signed the deal.
Yes.
Well, yeah, you seem like you're a proponent of the deal, and you like every move that Florida State
you were going on with Swofford in the dead of night, Ira, going to all those DOT members.
Exactly right. Let's get Notre Dame halfway pregnant. That's a great idea. That'll help the conference instead of bringing them in full time. So, yeah, to answer the question, though, obviously they want to bring Notre Dame in as a permanent member. Yeah. It's just a matter of if that can happen, if that's even, you don't have any real leverage at all. But, I guess stranger things have happened. I don't know. I guess Notre Dame could want to be in a real conference. Maybe they like playing in a championship game. They haven't done that since 1988. Maybe that was cool for them to actually play for a trophy. But a Other than that, I don't know why they would do it in the current the way the landscape is set up right now.
We're being fed some good information here by our own Tom Lang off camera. The SEC has gone ahead and officially extended the invitations to Texas and Oklahoma, but for the 2025 season. So we've got plenty of time, gentlemen, to find someone to dance with, someone to get us half pregnant, if you will, Corey. So let's remain optimistic in this. Let's keep it rolling. Let's go over to the Tribal Council, warchant.com. We got a question on there from BC Noles 16. I'll pop it up here for all of us. It's a two-part question, so let's begin with the first one. Let's say there's no way out of the grant of rights. So GOR, everybody, is grant of rights, which basically gives away all your television rights to ESPN. And the ACC decides to extend it again at some point in the future. What happens if everybody in the ACC wants to extend it except for FSU and Clemson? Do they leave the ACC at that point and are released from the remaining GOR, or do they remain until the date of the original GOR that they signed in 16, or are they forced to abide by what the rest of the conference decides?
From reading the contract, and Gene can speak more to this than I can, but from reading the contract, it has to, for any changes to be made, everybody has to agree to it. So 10 schools can't decide to do it without Florida State and Clemson, but at the same time, just because Florida State and Clemson don't agree to go extend it, that doesn't mean it makes the whole thing null and void.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, you're right now it goes through 35, 36 that season. And if the rest of if 2 years from now they say, hey, we want to extend the thing to 2040, at FSU Clemson say we don't want to do that, they go, okay, it's still going to continue to go. They're still obligated to 35, 36 unless somebody just decides to get rid of it, which I doubt.
Second part of the question, is there a law that allows an institution to end their contract with the conference if that conference severely weakens the institution's ability to capitalize on opportunities to make money? If the SEC or Big Ten calls FSU and Clemson to join them, then their payout could triple, if not more.
It'd be nice. I mean, I can't speak to a lot of it. Maybe we get All Noles, our resident attorney on the message board, can maybe answer this better than I can. But people sign non-competes all the time. And if you do that in an employment context, if somebody comes along, wants to offer you double money, it doesn't change. You can't say, well, I can make a lot more money. Well, you signed the non-compete. It seems like the same type of situation here. Now, maybe because we're dealing with different states, they have different laws. And at the end of the day, we don't even know what's in ESPN's contract. They've got it under lock and key in Bristol somewhere. So some of it we don't know, but my initial reaction be, I don't think that matters. It doesn't matter. You signed it and you're done.
Isn't the big problem here that, like, if FSU did want to just rip up this contract and walk away from it, ESPN still owns you. Like you're gonna hurt ESPN by doing that. And why would we believe that ESPN is going to welcome us if we were to join another conference, right? That's part of it.
Well, and the thing I was just responding more to his question also is, I think if FSU or Clemson could prove that the ACC acted in a way that was irresponsible or bad for business, then maybe there could be some sort of case. But I wouldn't think just by having crappy small schools in your conference, I don't think that's going to get it done.
I think there's some fans on our message board that would argue that John Swofford was incompetent negotiating contracts with ESPN.
Yeah, well, whether or not you can win that in the court of law, we'll have to see.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
All right. Hit that thumbs up button if you're watching us here live on YouTube. If you're watching the replay, I think you can still hit the thumbs up. So enjoy. Let's keep it here rolling on YouTube. Khalil Young.
Khalil, man, it's been a minute. It's been a minute, Khalil. What's up, man?
Khalil, man, says, first off, Khalil, thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. You were busy and active yesterday on the live chat with Michael Langston, which we do quite often as well. So check those out. Thank you, Khalil. Khalil says, of course, we need Florida State, Virginia Tech, Miami to get back to being top programs in the conference. But at the same time, I believe Notre Dame joining the conference in football would make it stronger. Is the problem more so money? I don't think ACC is bad football-wise.
Yeah, it's the money. It's as we showed earlier, as Aslan showed the breakdown of the payouts per conference. It's well over $200 million less than what the SEC. Over the course of the contracts. Yeah, I mean, look at that. You're making $21 million less than Vanderbilt. Now you're going to be a better football program than Vanderbilt because Vanderbilt, who knows what they do with that money? I guess they get starting pitching. I'm not quite sure how Vanderbilt spends their money, but yeah, the money is the big thing. As that chasm grows, you've seen what's happened. Like Gene said, 20 years ago, the ACC and the SEC were just about even. I mean, it wasn't that big a difference. 30 years ago, it really wasn't a difference at all. The last 20 years, as this sport has grown in popularity, and the SEC became this otherworldly conference that ESPN bowed down to, and CBS for that matter, the money went through the roof, and you're seeing. Look at the top 10, look at the playoffs, look at the championships. It's the same 4 or 5 schools that seem to compete every year. And a lot of that has to do with facilities and money and what you can pay coaches, what you can pay Brent Venables, what you can pay your quality control assistants if you're Nick Saban. And that gap is widening.
The only thing I would say, and it doesn't solve all the problems, but just to be as accurate as possible. So there are look-ins in the contract, and there's one in 2021 where every few years the conference and the ESPN will sit down and say, okay, are you still getting fair market value? Now, if the conference went on a run, and to his point, if Florida State and Virginia Tech and Miami really took off, and you Clemson stayed at a high level, and you North Carolina playing at a high level, and the conference now is drawing big ratings, it's playing in playoffs, it's doing big numbers as a league, then you would think when they do those sit downs with ESPN, they could say, look, this is where we were back then, but we're a different league now. You got to pay us more. But maybe, I don't know, is that $1 million more per team a year, $2 million more? I mean, so there is a way to get some extra money by improving the product. I just don't think it's exponential. It's not going to make up that big of a difference. The product has to get better, but I don't think it's going to make up that big of a difference.
Are we worried that the look-in will go, well, Miami sucks, Florida State sucks, we're going to give you less money?
You like to think that's not an option.
What? I mean, it's 2021. How bad? There's one team in the conference.
So you wouldn't want the look in right now.
No,
not in July. Not
worst
July
time
this
for
year.
the look in.
All right, let's keep it rolling here. Plenty more questions here on the YouTube channel. To Khalil's point, we certainly.
Well, hey, I just remembered one more thing. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
One more element. You got to think of a way to shoot this down, Gene. When Comcast comes on board, and everybody I talk to at FSU and in the ACC believes Comcast is going to come on board because the Disney contract is coming up, so they're going to force Disney's going to force Comcast to take the ACC network. That now you're getting in a lot more homes. That would cause more. That would bring in more money from the TV deal as well. Again, is it 20?
Yeah, but it's about. Oh, I agree 100%. Obviously, It's the biggest cable provider. It's going to bring you something. I'd be scared to see what the actual ACC network numbers are right now. I can't imagine they're much.
All they say is
selling those. As long as they're selling those nighttime binoculars, I hope they're selling those.
Brett Favre's copper bracelets.
Oh my gosh! But yeah, I do think. But it is my guess is $1 million or $2 million per school. I mean, that's great. That's you take it. But again, it's barely putting a dent in that gap. And like I said, with Oklahoma and Texas, are they going to get 10, 20 million more per school, where the ACC maybe $1 million or $2 million more per school? That keeps happening. That's not going to work.
I mean, they're going to stroke a check for like $76 million each. Texas OU to the Big 12.
Yeah.
I mean,
so just to pay off their grant of rights, right?
One thing about that though, because All Noles actually posted a question about that we can get to later, but since we're on that topic, a lot of people have this feeling that ESPN could just make the grant of rights go away. That ESPN would just say, oh, we want FSU and Clemson in the SEC, so we're going to waive the grant of rights. But the problem, if that was within their power, they would have done that with the Big 12 in this situation.
Right.
But instead, as the Big 12 is alleging with the legal jousting yesterday, they're alleging that the ESPN was trying to just completely destroy the entire Big 12, take the other remaining teams and send them to the AAC so that Texas and Oklahoma could get out of paying that $75 million apiece. So if they have to do that for Texas and Oklahoma, how would they just be able to wave a magic wand and let FSU and Clemson get out of theirs? So I don't think that theory makes any sense.
That's a good point. I think, but again, we don't know what that contract actually says. The deal with the ACC and ESPN, because we've never been able. Apparently, all the officials that signed the grant of rights signed a deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars for eternity without even seeing the main contract that affects it all. But also, I mean, on that too, but you're right. Here's the thing. Wake Forest, Syracuse, BC, I keep bringing up those teams, that those are effectively third-party beneficiaries of this deal. They're going to say it's not fair to us. We signed this deal through 35, 36. we're supposed to get all this money and you're just going to make it go away? Because no one's picking those teams up to go to the SEC or the Big Ten down the road. They're going to be left. I don't know who's going to take, but they can be FCS teams if it all plays out.
And we should say, I know this has probably been a pretty depressing half hour. We all think Florida State, however this shakes out, if it ends up being one huge league like the NFL or two huge conferences like the AFC and the NFC, whatever they end up doing with this sport, Florida State will have a seat in the table somewhere. Right. A team like Florida State, a team that's won 3 national titles in the last 28 years, is not going to be left hanging. If you're West Virginia, it might be you might be a little more worried. Florida State fans shouldn't be worried about the long-term effects as much as they should be worried about the next 10 years, because it just seems like it's set up, unless this move to a super league happens more quicker than we think. Florida State could just get, again, the gap between Florida State and Alabama could just get wider and wider and wider, and that's who Florida State, theoretically is trying to compete with on a national stage.
Did you see Dabo's go ahead, Aslan.
Isn't that the concern, though, that by the time Florida State does get a seat at the table, that the gap's going to be so wide that we're not going to have the leverage?
Yeah, but we don't know what the table's going to look like. It might be to the point where everybody gets the same cut of the TV deal. And Alabama's ahead, but you could catch up because you're going to get the same cut.
Why do all this crazy subterfuge to get Texas and Oklahoma and build this whole big thing and then be like, okay, now we'll be a real Democrat?
Well, that goes back what I'm telling you, Aslan. I don't think ESPN has some grand master plan. I think it's quick money grabs. Nobody's thinking stuff out, which is, again, why you need some oversight for college football. And I don't know if you guys saw this. It was interesting. Dabo made some comments about this where he said something like, it was weird. Of course, he's the he said it was weird. He gets specific numbers like there needs to be 35, and then he said, or 60 teams. And we have one division with them all together, like basically like break it all up into that. I was like, well, that's interesting that he's saying specific numbers on what this big college football league ought to be. But to your point, Corey, whether it's 30 or 60 or whatever the heck it is, I think Florida State's probably going to be in that group, which is at the end of the day, it's just, I hope that happens. I hope it's in our lifetimes. I mean, the longer this wait goes on, the worse it's going to be for Florida State.
Khalil's back, y'all, and he brought more money with him. Khalil, you're crazy. Calm down, man. Stop laughing at everybody. Thank you, though. We appreciate it immensely. This can't be about winning. He continues on, I guess, from his previous post. I guess maybe he doesn't get enough characters, so he had to pay for more characters. That's how we're rolling. Regardless of conference, if Texas is mediocre, they will never be back on top. If they couldn't do it in the Big 12, why does it make sense to move to the SEC? Laughing, crying emoji.
I agree with that. Texas is not going to – I mean, they're not going to have a lot of success.
Finally, what they want. They don't have to play Kansas State and Kansas anymore. Now they get LSU, Auburn, and Alabama. That's what all those – and look, it's great. We can do this, and it's a lot of money for that university. I get it. I understand the move. Well, your fans better get happy with 7 wins every year, which that fan base doesn't seem to be cool with that. But that's what you're doing. You've made something that's almost been impossible for you to do in the last 15 years, which is compete for championships, exponentially harder. And for what? I mean, I know I get it. You're making money. I get it. But I don't see how a football fan in Texas, they can't be that excited about this move, can they?
But isn't it just a matter of time? I mean, they've got the facilities. I mean they're in a recruiting hotbed state. They've got money. I mean, it's incredibly incompetent on their part. They've been this mediocre for this long with all those advantages. But
they've won one thing of note in our lifetimes,
and that's because of Vince Young.
Vince Young didn't
win anything.
I mean, it's crazy. Matt Brown won 3 conference championships there in 20 years. Like they don't win anything, and they never have. And they've always been Texas. They've always been the biggest. I won't say that, but they've always been one of the big people at the table.
If Colt McCoy didn't go down against Bama, who knows? Maybe they would have had a second.
That's true. They might have gotten that one. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma had a lot of trouble with the number 1 overall pick against Alabama. I don't know how Spencer Rattler won't be going up against them because it'll be several years down the road on that. Let's keep it rolling here, everybody. Again, if you could hit the thumbs up button, we certainly would appreciate it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, lower right corner. Hit a little bell that sets your notifications so you'll know when this stuff happens and you won't be showing up right now and feeling like you just lost on a whole bunch of good information, which you did, by the way. Zachary Escalante. Zachary, that's the first time name, I think.
Thanks, Zach.
Welcome, Zach.
The Z Train.
What's up, guys? Can we get Az on a second monitor? I got one. Come on, guys. Look what Gene's got me hooked up with, man. We're good.
You need 3.
Yeah, I feel like the super conference setup means we don't need a 12-team playoff, especially if we end up with dissolving the Big 12. Thoughts?
I think when they go to the super conference, if they end up with two conferences, like somehow the Big Ten and the ACC combine and the SEC takes Oregon and USC, I think you set it up like the NFC and the AFC. So I think you have what isn't that a 12-team playoff? Like 3 division winners, 3 wild cards. I mean, I think you're just going to do that. That's a format to follow that gives you a 12-team playoff. It's going to be crazy to see a team getting in the playoff with like an 8-4 record. But that's going to happen.
The NFL, but the other thing that I think is a positive for that is you're going to improve the TV inventory, because how many weeks go by where you go, I'm here for the noon game at Florida State don't play tonight. There's no good games on. You go entire weekends. There's not a good college football game.
Right.
If you limit that pool to 60, 50 teams, you're getting great games every day. But it's going to be like the NFL, where you're going to have, like you said, Corey, there's going to be teams with 4 losses getting in the playoffs. But I'd rather have competitive games, good college football games every afternoon, and that helps TV. That gives them a nice inventory.
I don't like the thought of like being, not you would be okay with 4 losses, but just again, this, Corey talked about this being his favorite sport. It's just every single game.
It's over. It's over. It's a different sport now, Aslan. I've come to grips with it. It's never going back to the way it was.
Thank you for the question, Zach. Very good. Did I cut you off or something? I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say the one thing that I'm kind of curious about is just getting to a super conference. What would have to happen is, the presidents from these different conferences would have to agree to break off and do this. But I still don't know what happens with, to Gene's point earlier, is the Wake Forest and the BC, the schools that don't get an invite. Are they just going to say, okay, cool, you guys go have fun. We're gonna go play William and Mary. Like, I don't know.
The lawyers are going to get rich over that, Ira. There's going to be a lot of lawsuits.
But yeah, ultimately, they would create some sort of board and a committee, and then they would be a governing structure. They'd hire a commissioner, and you would go in that route. But yeah, all these long-term deals and all these conferences, nobody quite as long as the ACC. There's going to be a lot of red tape that would have to be worked out.
Gordon,
think about the TV event though, Ira, when they do they reveal the 36 teams that have been invited to the super conference, and they do it on ESPN.
Show on ESPN. I love it. You can do like the tournament brackets,
Selection Sun. They've got the
and then live view from Florida State. Yeah, we made it.
The camera.
And then you have Wake Forest kids in their football house, like, oh, what? Oh, I guess we got to play William and Mary now. Oh well, that was fun.
They're all in there taking tests anyway. They're not paying attention.
Yeah, that's right, like Vandy kids.
They got an exam. It's like Stanford. They got an exam tomorrow.
Oh, we're going to keep this thing rolling to the top of the hour. We got plenty to get to.
Thank you, Gordon.
Thanks, Gordon.
But Gordon also has a question.
Oh, sweet.
Good enough. Thank you, Gordon. Appreciate how you did that. You could combine both of them, but we saw you right back to back, so that helps out. What do you think about the ACC going to 20 teams? Convince Notre Dame to join as a full member. Add Houston, Oklahoma State, Kansas, and Iowa State. This will bring in additional markets. Your thoughts?
The only one I would want there is Houston. Out of that group, I don't think that Kansas and Iowa State. Well, I know that they don't bring in nearly enough in eyeballs to make it worth your while anyway. And you got to think, okay, you're bringing in Notre Dame to make more money for the conference, so every team gets $4 million more. Well, you don't want to then split that up with 4 other teams. Then that makes the money less, because every team's getting less than they would if you just added Notre Dame. So I think Houston could be one, perhaps, but those other 3. They can just stay out there. It's fine.
Yeah. Again, we go back to it'd be great. I think everybody agrees we'd love to have Notre Dame in the ACC. It would obviously help financially everybody. But yeah, the more teams you add, the more that pie gets cut up thinner and thinner. Yeah. So go ahead.
The one thing that has been floated out a lot on our message boards lately, not a lot, but by a few people, North Virginia Noel and a few other guys, the idea that Penn State is not exactly thrilled with being in the Big Ten. They I think they might be attracted to being with East Coast schools. So if you could get Notre Dame and Penn State, now you're talking.
Yeah.
Put up those numbers again. What's the Big Ten making right now compared to the ACC? Why would they take a $20 million pay cut?
But man, if you add Notre Dame and Penn State and you get the Comcast and you get suddenly this is a different, you are going back to the table with ESPN.
Yeah, you're not that far off with the Big Ten. If you had Notre Dame and Penn State, you're not that far off.
Yeah, I mean, if they did it, I guess that would be that, and that would put a dent in the whole thing. There's no doubt about it. I'll say that we're going back to the question earlier. We found that problem before the ACC did about let's capture markets.
Right.
Because remember,
Yeah.
the whole thing was, let's put Boston College in there. You have the Boston, let's put Syracuse. You get the New
They didn't
York
ask
market.
us about that, did they, IRG? We could have told them nobody in Boston gives a rat's behind about Boston college football. Nobody.
When
now,
Florida
lacrosse, they do, Corey.
In hockey, when Florida State went up to, I'll never forget, when BC joined the conference, and the first game was the season opener against Florida State, and I went up there to cover the game. On the day of the game, I got the Boston Globe to see this big coverage of the FSU game, the first game in the ACC, and it was on page like 13 of the sports section.
It was ESPN primetime game,
and so
nothing.
Yeah, not a huge college football market.
Weird that didn't really move the needle when it came to ratings. We're still having to buy glow-in-the-dark binoculars, even with that huge Boston market and the big New York market for Syracuse.
Do the binoculars glow in the dark?
No, well, no, I guess you see things in the dark. Yeah, that kind of defeats the purpose if you're stalking someone and the thing you're using, it glows in the dark. So that would be a bad product.
Man. Sounds like we need to get them for a sponsor for Wake Up Warchant, Corey.
Oh, man, I would love a set of those. That would be great.
When are we going to talk about the Pac-12 teams? Nobody wants to talk about Pac-12 teams. It's just they're out there. And
what do you got? You got Oregon and USC, right?
I mean, I take Washington.
You take UW. They got to be in there.
And that's a big market, but it's also a market that seems to care about that team.
I mean, is UCLA out? Have they gone? They're not viable
it's such
anymore?
A big market, but man, I wouldn't take UCLA unless I had to because I was getting USC.
Arizona State has a beautiful campus. I don't know. I kind of like to go play the Sun Devils.
UCLA tries. I mean, they got Jim Moore. Jim Moore Jr. didn't work out. They tried. And they got Chip Kelly. They got a quarterback now. I wouldn't mind going to LA.
Lifetimes though, and they haven't done anything really.
Yeah. Ray Pereira just dropping the hammer on everybody. Let's go.
Hardcore.
Ric Flair voice. I can't do the Ric Flair voice, but what's causing all this? What is causing all this? I mean, John Skipper was on Dan Le Batard's podcast. John Skipper used to be a longtime ESPN executive and, talked about basically this wasn't Oklahoma and Texas's idea.
Yeah.
This was the television partner's idea to get this all going. And I mean, I don't know. I guess ultimately the hope, maybe the vision is like a 32 team football centric conference. And then you make it NFL style. And that's maybe the end goal.
What it is right now, though, I think, and thank you, Ray. It's been a minute, man. Thank you very much. You're the best. Can we take the Y off that hashtag and just? I like hardcore a lot better than hardcore. It's just a whole different deal there. Just hardcore. Let's stay with hardcore.
Right after Gene was talking about the scenery at Arizona State.
Right. Well, yeah. Right. So yeah. I just think that when we look at this as a whole, man, it can't be this. This can't just be what college football is going to be. The SEC plus Texas and Oklahoma and everything else stays put. That's not viable for college football fans, except for 7 schools. Like, I don't even include like Kentucky in that or Vanderbilt in that. Yeah, they get a lot more money. They're also going to get their head beat in more. So it really is beneficial to like 7 or 8 schools, maybe. Texas and Oklahoma for sure. But this can't be how it ends up. That's why we think something will change. You just can't stand pat, right? If you're these conferences and you're these football programs, Florida State and Clemson can't just say, okay, well, I guess that's how it's going to be.
But what's crazy about this whole thing and everything we heard when we were at ACC kickoff, when this news broke, it seemed to take everybody in the ACC by surprise. I don't think that this was, to Gene's point earlier, sometimes we think that ESPN's this puppeteer and everything's lined up and they've got all their ducks in a row. But the reality is, if that deal was in the works for 4 or 5 months before it actually happened, and the people at the ACC were surprised by it, it doesn't sound like they know what the next step is going to be from ESPN. So is there a next step from the ESPN? And if there's not, can these conferences pull it off without ESPN pulling the strings? So that's what concerns me about the ACC is, and they do have a new commissioner, and I think we've heard so many good things about Jim Phillips, but wouldn't they already have an idea of where this is going if there is a master plan?
I hope you're right, Ira. I mean, that's really the only hope, because Corey mentioned, man, if it's just, let's just sit around and wait and see what happens. It's not going to end well for anybody outside those 7 teams. Think about what's Kentucky's schedule going to be like in a couple of years. Well, we start at LSU and then Alabama, then go to Oklahoma and then Georgia and then Florida. I mean, it's nuts. It's not only bad for it's bad for those middle of the run. I mean, occasionally Kentucky gets almost 500 and can make a bowl game every few years. Forget it now. They got no shot.
Yeah, so it's all going to be really intriguing what this looks like and how the rest of the country kind of counters and does something. Because I don't know that ESPN has a grand vision for 2036 and what this sport will look like, but I don't think these conferences can just stand pat and be like, okay, well, and then that's like what would happen if the SEC came and offered FSU and Clemson, which I'm sure everybody watching this would be like, absolutely, let's do it. But then what is Ohio State sitting there thinking? Oh, great. You know what oh, cool, man. Is this what you are going to do? Like, there's just, you got to think that there's got to be some, I don't know, some equity at some point. It's already SEC centric. It's already been SEC heavy for a decade now, 15 years. You've got to figure out a way to make this more equitable across the country and for other football programs, or it just won't work long term, I don't think.
Really wonder what the feeling like is in Clemson. Like, I wonder if they're feeling the same sort of, anxiety that we all are. But somebody said it, it's not markets, it's building brands.
Yeah.
Notre Dame week 1, there you go. Back on this rocket to the moon.
Hey, there's an iconic brand right here. So let's make it happen. ESPN.
We're rebuilding that iconic brand.
Bo Roy. Thank you, man. I wonder if he's related to Logan Roy in the Succession family.
Thank you, Bo.
Happy hour funds. Thank you, Bo. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. A lot of new names we're seeing here on the screen. Appreciate it. Hopefully new subscribers to the website as well as the YouTube channel, which again is right in the right-hand corner of the screen. I'm never going to
subscribe to it.
Yeah, hit the thumbs up button as well too. Appreciate it. Do what Tom Lang says. Hit the thumbs up if you want BC out. And if you like
I love Tom's already doing a great job, man. That's awesome.
Smart, Tom.
Rules are rules, everybody. The Brother Man throws $5. Appreciate you, the Brother Man. Sup, Warchant Bros. What are the chances West Virginia joins the ACC to see how they play in conference? Also, will Florida State, West Virginia become the new Florida State, Miami?
Probably not. In West Virginia's, I know their name's been floated around a lot. You just got to ask. I mean, I know they care about their program. That's one thing that would separate them from most of the people in this conference. They actually do care about college football, and they got the cool tradition singing John Denver at the end of a game
and burning couches.
And they love to burn couches, and we can all get behind that. Ira, you grew up couch burning. Your nickname
never stopped.
In the hard streets of Miami, burning
couches. And you still do it. But like, what would they add? What would they add? Would they add enough to make them? I mean, you can bring them in with Notre Dame, maybe, but I don't know that on their own they don't move the needle. They just don't. It's just there aren't many that do. 2 that do just went to the conference whose needle is already pegged all the way over to the right anyway.
I would like it from a football perspective. I think there's some neat rivalries here. Miami and them had a rivalry. Pitt, obviously, right there geographically. And earlier, if Penn State were to come in, I mean, you got a nice little kind of hodgepodge, just really some good teams up in that region. So they would be a complementary piece, and it'd be a good football piece. But in terms of financially, they just wouldn't move the needle at all.
Hey, Aslan, you put up a comment, or you or Tom, whoever's working the strings in this production, we have co-producers. There was one about they wouldn't want to watch if college football became like the NFL with a playoff like that they wouldn't want to watch it anymore. I did want to bring that topic up because I've had a lot of people, and Corey, I think you touched on it in your column, and a lot of people that I've been texting with and talking to over the last week or two, there's just it's not just about what's happening to Florida State in the arms race, but what's happening in college football as a whole. I don't. How do you guys think the sport is in literal danger because of all this, or do you think people they'll complain about it till August comes around and then buy their tickets and go back to games?
I mean, I think college football is changing before our eyes, and if you don't adapt with it, if you try, and I get it, I was with Corey, man, the whole thing, like there's 2 undefeated teams and a couple 1-loss teams that are all battling for that. I mean, that was so exciting, that November stretch run that we grew up with, but that's not that's just not going to be college football going forward. It has dramatically changed with the money, with the NIL, everything that's happening there. I think the only viable solution is what we talked about. I mean, the Knight Commission came out and basically, said there should be some bigger governing body over this whole thing. I think that's the way to go. It's got to go to the NFL model. It's not going to be the same, but I think it'll make the sport more viable for long term, and more markets will be engaged in it. Right now, there's the fear it's going to become a very regionalized sport, and it's not great for 70% of the country is going to be tuned out.
Yeah, and just know I'm not a fan of it either. I love the days of growing up. Even I didn't like the way the championship was decided. I thought that was ridiculous. But just growing up in the 90s and the 80s watching college football, it's completely different than it is today. But that horse is out of the barn, man. It's not coming back. And look, man, you got the NIL. You've got 100 kids a year skipping bowl games if they're not playing in the playoffs. Just the whole sport has changed, and so you either adapt with it or you die. I guess somebody said that once, didn't they? You adapt or die. I think somebody said that.
But do you have to let the other horses out of the barn? You can't just go catch that other horse.
That horse is gone, Ira, and all the horses are steamrolling past it too. Yeah, so yeah, like I don't like where the sport is going. Hopefully, they can find some steady ground. Where at least more teams have a chance to compete, and it's more equitable. But yeah, I don't think anybody that grew up watching Florida State, or just college football in general, is a huge fan of where this is at right now. It's not the sport that we grew up with. It's changed more than any sport in our lifetimes, even more than college basketball. And people, if you're young in college basketball, really good players would stay for 4 years. Shaq stayed for 3. Crazily, but so that's how much college basketball has changed, and that's still more like what we grew up with than what college football is now. I mean, again, you have college football head coaches making more money than NFL head coaches, so it's the NFL light right now as it is.
Morris Simmons, thank you very much. 25 bones in the jar. More, these are new names. This is awesome. New names, new faces, hopefully as well. Hopefully, longtime folks will be watching these videos here on YouTube. Hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel if you have a minute there. You do. You're listening to us talk about this, obviously. Morris says, do you think the ACC and Big Ten should talk about a merger to counter the SEC?
Absolutely. I mean, if it could happen, yeah. I mean, you got to think Michigan and Ohio State, the power in that conference, don't like what's going on either. They have to be a little concerned about it, and that would seem to be a way to do it. But it goes back to, does it make sense for ESPN to do this? And then it's the Big Ten want to merge and have Wake Forest and BC and all these bottom dwellers that are just sucking the money away from everybody and not contributing anything. That's going to end up being the issue at the end of the day. But if it could make money and ESPN was on board and you could bring everyone in, absolutely. It would definitely solve the problem in the short term.
Don't we think that FSU and Clemson are going to be connected like this with whatever happens? Shouldn't FSU and Clemson make sure they're in lockstep, like Texas and Oklahoma were?
Oklahoma just hosed Oklahoma State, man. I mean,
well, yeah, it's a school. FSU and Clemson are the two big boys of this conference.
Yeah.
I know FSU is what it is.
Yeah, it definitely was the case in 2013 when they signed the grant of rights. That was Eric Barron said that he and the Clemson's president had a pact that if either one of them was thinking about going somewhere else, they were going to let the other one know. So they did have a deal. Now, that was 8 years ago. Whether or not that still applies. Hey, Gene, I just wanted to say, since Aslan brought up so many new people watching and tipping, I'm sure some people are wondering where our new faces are. Jeff Cameron and Tom Lang. They'll be on these coming forward. They're just not on this one right now.
Yeah, Tom is actually producing behind the scenes, doing a great job for us. Thank you, Tom. And then Jeff officially starts August 1st. Now, to give you a little bit more information, August 9th, the Jeff Cameron Show will return on 93.3 FM in Tallahassee. And this very YouTube channel, the reason you want to subscribe down there and hit that bell is Jeff and Tom will be live every single day on this channel. If you can't listen to Tallahassee or listen to the live online stream, you can watch it on YouTube, either live or delayed every single day. So we're trying to bring it to you, but you're going to see it. You're going to get sick of Tom and Jeff. You're going to see him so much.
Never.
And Seminole headlines too. I forgot about it. So once a week,
right?
We're going to endeavor if we can get Corey to get out of bed and get there live every week. Seminole headlines. So
1 p.m.
Yeah,
it's 1 p.m. I can definitely be there live.
You can.
I'll be there early.
All right.
I'll be there at 12:40.
Early.
I don't
You got
care.
that? Hour? Write that down. He said he's going to be early.
If it's at 1 p.m., I'll be there early.
Morris,
Yeah.
thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Fatal
Morris.
Jedi dropping $10 in the jar as well. Thank you, Fatal
Thank
Jedi.
you, sir.
A little bit of that. If you got a question for us, go ahead and post it. I'll try to find it here in this large bin of questions, this repository, all these questions we got to. Travis H. says, enjoy the content, boys. Keep up the good work. Thank you kindly. Thank you, Travis.
Is that a Karate Kid little
Oh, yeah.
insignia he's got there? It's pretty cool looking, whatever it is. It looks a little, I don't know if it's Karate Kid, but it's cool looking.
It's not Miyagi Dojo.
It's not Miyagi-Do.
Not Miyagi Dojo. Gator Kirk's here, everybody. He can't
There he
call.
is.
He's still going to post. Yeah, we're not taking phone calls, by the way, everybody. So if you're hopefully you're not calling into the line, we don't have the number posted. But practice starts August 7th. That's a fact, everybody. $7.75 from Mr. 757 Gator Kirk. Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
Kirk.
Thank you.
Gator
Gordon-
Kirk, good to have you back, buddy.
Gordon Alford, your question in Psycho is a good question. He's back though. I mean, Gordon, you want an encore?
Mark.
It's your encore. It's your encore, Gordon. No one even hinted at that, Gordon. We loved your question. It was a good question.
Yeah.
Are there a couple of college football teams in Europe that we could add to the ACC global market?
Or China, or yeah.
I mean,
Find-
Bjorn
find
Werner
new
probably
markets.
has connections in Germany for sure. There's probably a Berlin team he started up that you could. I mean, that would be the ACC, right? They'll expand and go to Germany. Oh, let's get that Berlin market. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do
They care
Canada.
much about college football
Let's do Canada first. We're already Syracuse is almost in Canada already,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
But
Them in Ottawa, man, that could be quite the rivalry.
but to be truly ACC, they would add Germany for the market, but not beyond whatever the cable provider is in Germany.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You can watch streaming.
Will there be a Warchant tailgate opening day?
Gene.
We're still TBA. We're definitely going to have something going on post game, I would think. I don't know about pregame. It's a little difficult to get something going on pregame, but that's another thing. Jeff and Tom will have a live pregame show or a pregame show, and then we're hoping to be somewhere around the stadium. We're still working on that after the game.
So Jeff Cameron show live daily. You've got Seminole Headlines live weekly. We do these every so often. We do the podcast Wake Up Warchant every so often live. Michael Langston has a live recruiting show that he does in which somebody tips such a large sum of money that Michael, usually tight-lipped on these live shows,
Yeah.
he buckled, he caved, he spilled the beans. That guy was Willie Johnson. He gave 150.
Hey!
He's back today. Let's go, Willie. Oh, man. He wants Langston. I can see what we can do. Maybe we can get Langston on the line to wave and say hi, Willie. Whatever you want, you get, man. We certainly appreciate it. Beyond generous, Willie. You're crazy, but I like you, man. You're crazy, but I like it. I like it.
Willie,
Yeah,
bring
Willie,
your
thank you, buddy.
Warchant hoodie to one of the games this year. We definitely the drinks are on us.
We'll get Langston to sign it.
Yeah.
Not to be outdone. We got dueling. It's like dueling.
Woo!
Oh, Michael.
Let's go.
Wow.
Straight cash, homie.
Big ball and smashing, taking my ends.
Michael Hinton drops $100. Strong move, Michael.
Whoa.
Thank you very much, man. That's incredible. Thank you, buddy.
If Clemson and FSU partner together like Texas and OU, they could get out of the ACC and go to the Big Ten or beg the SEC to take them. What would you rather do, Gene? Beg the SEC or just put the thumb out and hope that the Big Ten picks us up?
I think we take either one. I think that'd be great. I mean, sure, at the end of the day, you want to be in the SEC. Geographically, it's the same. You'd have some great rivalries. I would be down with that. I think either one. But again, we go back to the issue. I think FSU and Clemson would love to do it. I think we don't know about the SEC, but I think the way things are going, somebody would want to take Florida State and Clemson if they get them. But again, there's that pesky grant of rights still sitting out there. You got to figure out a way around that thing for these things to happen. So hopefully there's some kind of magic loophole somewhere that somebody could come up to make it happen.
Corey, you're not one to live on your knees. You'd rather die on your feet than live on your knees, right?
What an image. Correct. Yeah, no, but yes, FSU and Clemson, they would probably, I mean, Clemson's the second best program in the country. Florida State used to be. Like there's still some marquee value there. And I just think they got to be in lockstep together, which I think they would be. I don't think the rivalry is that, man, well, I don't know. Dabo I don't think Dabo burned that many bridges last year with his nonsense, but
well, hey, Tom's posting some good show notes here in the background for me to bring up to the discussion, which is really good, and that is, how much tread's left on. I mean, he's not slowing down, but Nick Saban's not going to coach forever. You would think Dabo is probably on the short list to go home to Tuscaloosa when Nick does step away. So, do you hope that you do leverage? I mean, do you have to leverage Clemson and this sort of ride they're on now and not wait if you're FSU in the ACC?
I mean, Clemson's never going to be hotter than they are right now, obviously. And they've made 6 straight playoffs. They've won a couple national championships. They're definitely, they're red hot. The question is, I think that would concern you a little bit about them is, it's been this run. That's it. This is, there was a long time before this where they were sorry. Once Florida State joined the ACC, Clemson went to nothing and didn't do anything until Dabo got there and Jimbo kind of took his eye off the prize and things started to kind of crater here. But if Florida State gets back to where it was, and if Dabo leaves, does Clemson stay at that level, or do they fall back to that second tier? And if I don't know if they have the staying power. Florida State has now done it under 2 different head coaches. They've won 3 national titles. They've done it over different decades. I don't know if Clemson has earned that status, even though that's where they are right now.
Well, I think we can. I don't really know if Clemson's a national brand. I mean, if I go, you guys, when you travel around other parts of the country, I don't see anybody wearing Clemson. When I go to, went up to Tennessee a couple months ago to other places, I still see people walking around with FSU gear. I don't see anybody wearing Clemson gear. And I looked at the rating service, so you can go on sometimes, TV ratings. Now, I was looking to do a story a few years ago about TV ratings at ACC teams. What I was really surprised at is how poor ratings were in bowl games when it was Clemson and Virginia Tech would play. Their ratings were awful compared to a lot of other teams in the ACC. And what when you broke down the numbers, what it showed you was that Clemson was a very regional team. There's very few people outside of South Carolina that tune in to see them. Same thing with Virginia Tech. So that's the difference for Florida State. On the other hand, even when they were mediocre, they were getting pretty good national ratings, and that's because they're a national brand. People see Florida State, they see the spear and the helmet, they tune in. Clemson, not so much.
Yeah,
I think Clemson's getting there. I mean, Clemson's closer though than they were 3 or 4 years ago or 5 years ago. I mean, they've been a part of the playoff now for 6 years. So I assume that the name brand is growing every year they make the playoff.
Michael, thank you again for the
thank you very much, man.
Tip. Very much. Thank you so much. Eric's back. Everybody's going to close us out here. Bring every school. Let's give you a little more juice here, though, Eric. There you go. Bring every school from the Big Ten and ACC. Merge them. Go Noles. See you guys. Notre Dame afterwards. That's going to be late. What time are we going to be partying, guys? Are you going to be able to set the scene for us afterwards? And actually, I'll go party for us.
Yeah, I'll be working.
I was going to be working.
I'll let Gene and Tom Lang will be doing the post game show, and you guys will get over there and make an appearance. But I'll probably be reading Corey's beautiful column and trying to
the first big win of the Norvell era, and the Noles are back.
North Carolina was the first big win, buddy.
Oh man, they followed that up with some nonsense, so I don't count that one. That one went back into the ditch. When you lose to Louisville by 100 the next week, you lose.
So if they beat Notre Dame and then lose to Wake Forest 2 weeks later, Corey's the same thing, right?
Not a big win anymore. It's not a big win anymore. Man, wouldn't it be nice to not have to worry about losing to Wake Forest if they were just playing in another conference somewhere?
Just make sure you put a playoff reference into the Notre Dame column if it's a win, because you got to, Corey, do it. Surrender.
Okay. All right. Yeah, sure.
All right, that's a wrap on this. All the great questions from everybody here on YouTube. We certainly do appreciate it. There's much more going on over warchant.com. Set the scene for us, Ira. What's going to be going on over at the website here in the coming days, and as we get even closer again to camp starting August 7th?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking ahead to camp starting, so we'll have some preseason camp coverage coming shortly. Recruiting is still going on this week. So Michael and Austin have been out there. I think they had a 5-star visitor today on campus, and so they'll have coverage of that. And then just really getting ready for preseason camp, which is next week. We also we're going to get a look at. We should have out pretty soon. We're going to have a look at the sales preview center that FSU is going to be using to try to entice people to buy tickets for a renovated Doak Campbell Stadium. We've also got some coverage of the strength program that I think you might be having coming in the works here. And then we also had a sit-down one-on-one interview with Mike Norvell that's going to be coming on the website as well. Not sure if it may not be till next week, but people can watch that, us sitting down with Coach Norvell and talking about this past summer and leading into the season.
That's it, huh? That's all? That's all we got coming up?
Just a few things.
Awesome. And the podcast will still be going on. And again, as Gene mentioned, August 9th, he said, Jeff's
August 9th will be we will launch the Jeff Cameron Show right here on YouTube. Subscribe to that. And I think we're going to have some, in addition to what Ira said, we're going to crank up as we're getting into football season, we're going to crank up YouTube stuff. Not only shows, we're going to have a lot of creative content Tom Lang's going to put together for you. So some really neat features. So you don't want to miss on. We'd love you to subscribe to Warchant, but if you don't, that's fine. You can subscribe to YouTube for free. So you'll get all this stuff for free. We'd love to have you. So just click on that subscribe, click on the bell so you're notified when these features come out. So just a lot of good stuff coming.
Yeah. Thanks again, everybody, for your questions. Thanks for the tips. Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Tom, giving me some stuff to talk about so I don't stumble over myself. Much appreciated as well. Look for the podcast. Look for more.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. When's the next Wake Up War Chant?
Yes.
Tomorrow morning.
Come on, Corey. When is it?
Promo.
Tomorrow morning. It's bright and early, midnight, 12:01. That baby drops. You're gonna love all my takes, hot takes.
Go to iTunes, go to Google Podcasts. You want to subscribe to that too. And I know you guys, you love the 5-star reviews, right there, Aslan.
Yes, 5-star ratings and the reviews. And drink your DeLuna coffee. Our guy Ed showed up here earlier in the podcast. Somebody said they just ordered 2 bags of DeLuna. That's awesome.
There we go. Nice.
And Corey, you want to preview that you're going to be in Pensacola, right, next month?
I will be. That's a month from now, right? August 28th, maybe?
26th.
August 26th. Yeah, I think Jeff Cameron and I will be mosey on over there to give. I mean, people in Pensacola deserve it. They deserve a little Jeff and Corey time. So congratulations if you're living in Pensacola.
Angelo, you want it. You got it, man.
Yep.
Stay connected to warchant.com and subscribe to the warchant.com YouTube channel. For all the gentlemen you see on your screen, Tom Lang, I'm Aslan. Thanks for watching. Have a great one, everybody.